TDSB. Tarak Ahmed holds a master's degree in social work from the University of Toronto and an MBA from the University of Fredericton. With over a decade of experience, he has made notable contributions in areas such as mental health, addiction management, suicide prevention, and crisis intervention. Tarak's professional journey has seen him in roles at institutions like the Canadian Mental Health Association, St. Michael's Hospital, the City of Toronto, and the Ministry of Health. Presently, he supervises counseling services at the University of Toronto and serves as a professor in the Addictions and Mental Health Diploma program at Centennial College. We are going to begin with the land acknowledgement. We acknowledge we are hosted on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and the Wendat. We also recognize the enduring presence of all First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Hello, Tarak. Welcome.
Thank you, Rose. Thank you for having me.
All right, so we're going to work through some questions. My first question for you, Tarak, is how does Muslim identity and heritage play a role in shaping responses to conflict and challenging times?
Perfect. Thank you for the question. So, in terms of my Muslim identity, or we can say, towards a lot of Muslim, is very complex given that Muslims come from all parts of the world, right? So, if you look at a Muslim that grew up in Central Africa versus someone in Malaysia or in India, how they identify is very different. But firstly, I think one of the common identity as a Muslim is about being at the service of others. It's about making this world a better place. Doing everything you can. It's not just about this idea that, you know what, I pray, I fast, I give in charity, that, I do all of these little things at home. But fundamentally, it's the second part is about what am I doing to be at the service of my community? What have I done to make this world a better place? So when we see from our Muslim perspective things in conflict where innocent people are being killed or they're suffering, it's very painful because it's in direct contradiction to what Islam is about, right? And it's this notion of bringing peace and making this world a better place. But to the latter part of the Muslim identity, collectively, as we see it, what's going on in the world, what's the second painful part is this: the Muslim identity right now is being hijacked, being mislabeled, being stigmatized, and we see all of the biases that are coming out, especially from the media lens. A lot of negative things are coming, what it means to be a Muslim, and a lot of Muslims at this moment are fearful of themselves identifying as Muslim, especially in the rise of Islamophobia and everything that's taking place. So someone who is visibly Muslim going out, do they have a sense of proud identity that I'm proud to be Muslim? Or is there an inherent sense of fear that perhaps I shouldn't visibly be Muslim because I can be targeted, right? So this is something that's going on and that we see shaping our responses during conflict. And then outside of all of this, we're in a poly crisis, right? People are having a hard time buying food and paying rent and all of these other things going on. So to add on top of it, this issue of one's identity, who they are intrinsically from their soul, and they really can't express themselves the way they want to. It adds a certain layer of complexity. But our responses as Muslims, and this is really inherent part of our identity, who we are, we always start off with the spiritual coping, right? The sense of turning to God, turning to the Quran for comfort and guidance. Um, Part of our identity is to this sense of recognition that God, regardless of what's happening in the world, that God is the most merciful, He is kind, He loves us, that everything that takes place, it's through His divine wisdom. And us really inherently understanding these spiritual words, often that we reflect on in order to find that sense of comfort. And this is what helps us move forward and fight depression so we don't feel a sense of feeling hopeless, helpless, or powerless, and it also keeps us grounded. The second notion of our Muslim identity, as I mentioned, is about being at the service of our community. So in our response, it doesn't matter what's going on. We're always going to be at the service of our community and ensuring our community is successful. And when we say our community, it's not just the Muslim community, but anybody that lives within the jurisdictions that we may live in, to make sure that they're doing well and we are doing something that has towards the benefit of others and bringing people together collectively. um, the third response is really about activism and fighting Islamophobia all of the other racism, anti-Semitism, we can recognize that these things are at an all-time high right now. And a lot of people, either you're Muslim, Jewish, you don't feel safe. And it's unfortunate that this event is taking place in the Middle East, but someone in Toronto doesn't feel like they could go outside to their mosque or to their synagogue and pray safely. And it is very concerning. So really looking at it from that perspective to see, okay, this is what's happening. But as a Muslim, I can't just remain quiet. Part of our identity is to speak up and stand up for justice, and to try to do everything we can within our capacity to make sure everyone feels safe and welcoming within their respective communities. So we do have some work to do here, right? Pain should bring us together, and only through our common humanity can we find the solution moving forward. And Islam again preaches this again and again, and it's the core fundamental of our identity. Don't just stay home and pray and do all of the good that God asks you to do, but go out there and do something for the betterment of your community.
All right. Thank you. Question number 2 is, what Muslim traditions or practices provide a sense of resilience and connection during these challenging times to support wellness?
Yeah, so when we look at first just the sense of resiliency in general, it's founded through personal growth, self-awareness, and learning from our experiences. And then when we look, step back and we say, okay, what does resiliency mean from the perspective of being Muslim? It just adds an additional layer on top of everything else that most of us deal with. So it helps us, again, naturally cope, helping us build coping strategies, emotional regulation, adaptability, helps with our self confidence, sense of self compassion sometimes. It's about helping us have a positive attitude and optimism, regardless of what's going on in the world. And this is sometimes that puts us in this state of depression. And our Muslim identity often talks about this notion of hope, right? And there's a famous ayat in the Quran where God talks about that no one loses hope in the mercy of God, right? That the sense that God is able to do all things and we're able to overcome every trial and tribulation. So this sense that it's okay, right? It will get better. Better days are coming. We have to practice patience. But patience isn't just sitting at home and doing nothing, right? When affliction or difficulties come our way, Islam, like every religion, recognizes that there's multiple spheres and dimension to an individual. So it really looks at physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually what is happening. And these are the four foundations to resilience. So, and we think about a sense of how can I be resilient? We have to understand that what impacts does it have on our wellness? And then we can try to figure out what can we do about it. So when we look at it physically, for example, if you're watching the news and you're seeing, all of this going on, how does it affect me physically? What's the impact on my wellness? How has it affected me mentally? How has it affected me emotionally? How has it affected me spiritually? And then once we understand this, then we go through the cycle of change. It's not understanding and recognizing is only one out of the four component. So then we say, okay, I've recognized that physically I'm being impacted. Then it's about acceptance. And acceptance here, it's not about, when we see conflicts or people suffering, that we have to like it. Of course, we don't like it. Sometimes we don't even understand it and it doesn't make sense to us. But the notion is this is something beyond us, right? And this is the notion back to our Muslim identity, this idea that God does things in his divine wisdom. We don't always understand it. So we recognize this an issue is affecting us, but we accept it as is. But then we go to our notion of what we call the control assessment, things that we have control within our life. And we do have control of our physical wellness, our mental wellness, our emotional wellness, and our spiritual wellness. So we have to ask ourselves, what am I doing in terms of my actions in order to address it? So we want to be action oriented. And then once we get those things going to ensure our overall wellness, how do I maintain it? What am I doing consistently to maintain my emotional, physical, spiritual wellness on a regular basis? And again, it's about this notion when we get through it that we don't control everything. Not everything is in our control, right? And part of resiliency is recognizing, sitting back and saying, some aspects are within our control, within our influence, and some aspects are outside of it. Things that we can do, we should do. If it's outside, we leave that be, because there's no point in us stressing over it because we can't do anything about it, right? So prioritizing based on actions and the things that we can do versus stressing about things that we have no control over.
Thank you. And the third question sort of speaks to what you have already been talking a little bit about. In what ways can we incorporate Muslim identity into coping strategies to help families navigate the impact of the conflict more effectively, especially when speaking with their children?
I think this is the hardest one, right? Especially when we talk about families. As a parent myself with young children, when I sit back and think about having an honest conversation. So I'll provide some tips. One of the first things is to recognize this notion of open communication. Um, Kids are going to hear it from different areas, either from their friends or hearing it on the news or however they're going to understand there's something going on. So just having an open conversation with children, creating a home. Often at home, we talk about physical safety, but we miss the psychological safety component. Is the home safe where your kids feel like they can speak their mind freely without any fear, without any repercussions? Can they just openly speak to you with whatever is bothering them and have an open, honest, obviously age appropriate discussion where parents are going to show them a sense of patience and empathy and understanding towards what's going on? So first focus on this notion of open communication connected to a space that's psychologically safe. And when we create that space, then we can offer this notion of coping and strategies that we can, as a family, we can heal together. So it's going back to the four dimensions of wellness, right? Physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual, and walking through with the kids that look, it's okay when we see things on the news, when we're affected by certain calamities, when we go through different challenges, the impact on our life looks very different. So your children may experience it differently than you are. For example, emotionally, they might be going to school where kids are calling them terrorists, or other students are making fun of them, or they're embarrassed of being Muslim at that time and openly expressing their identity and their thoughts. So having a conversation at home to recognize these things. What actions can you do to address it? And again, going back to the control dimension, what can they do as children within their control to address it? What can you do? And maybe some things are beyond you that you need to bring to the school's administration and seeing collectively as a community how you can address it. And this goes to my third point, this notion of community engagement. Um, Everyone is feeling different things at different times. All of our children are seeing the same messaging. All of them are feeling hurt by what's going on. So it's about the sense of community coming together, doing things collectively, having community activities, fundraising, charity events that you can organize where they get a firsthand experience in terms of not just listening and observing what's going on, but they feel empowered to do something about it. They feel empowered to make a positive change in the face of adversity, that they're not going to just sit on the sidelines, but they have an active role in helping the community come out of this. So there's that sense of recognition. The next one is really about, again, connected to that sense of openness. How do they feel about being Muslim? The Muslim identity that's in question. Again, this leads to a lot of action. What can you do to help them? Do they feel like, are they scared to go to school? Are they not able to enjoy some of the day-to-day activities that they used to enjoy? Are they scared to go to the park? Are they afraid to go to the mall? Are you, as parents, not taking them to different places because you're scared? Right? It's having that, again, sense of open conversation and looking towards action. Can we do something? It's not just about sitting at home. We have to be action oriented. And that's the notion of coping, that when we feel something, it bothers us. There's an emotional component, then there's an actionables component, and then there's a spiritual component, right? Seeking help in prayer, being patient, connecting with spiritual advisors, looking for that. And the last point is, it's okay for us to sometimes say, you know what, as a parent, as I'm talking to my kids, I have exhausted all of the resources at my disposal. I don't know what to do. I need outside support. So you can work with the school or external organization to navigate different places where they can get emotional support. They can navigate different services that will help them build their self-esteem, their self-confidence, and their sense of identity and who they are. And it's a therapeutic healing process for them. So as parents, it's okay for you to sometimes pause and reflect and say, perhaps this is beyond me. Perhaps I don't have those skills. And it's okay to ask for help. So please, if you're stuck on this, ask for help. Reach out to individuals within your circles and say, I need help, I need support. So we all can be there again. We can collectively heal, move forward, and ensure that our communities are doing good collectively as a whole. And together, we're fighting all forms of ism, either it's Islamophobia, anti Semitism, racism, all of it we're tackling at the same time. So everyone feels safe, everyone feels welcome, and everyone feels appreciated and valued.
Thank you, Tarak, for sharing your expertise and your thoughts with us today. That is very much appreciated. All right, so I'm going to, I can't stop the recording at the moment. So are there any other thoughts that you'd like to add to that that could maybe go at the end? I know it's going to go through editing after that, but if you have any other thoughts, please do share. And if not, I guess we basically leave the Zoom.
No other thoughts. Again, same notion that you don't have to be alone. There's lots of resources available, right? These things are going to affect everyone differently. It's okay to not be okay and ask for help, right? That's the notion. There's tons of resources. Please seek out. Don't be alone in your situation where you feel hopeless, helpless, and powerless.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Tarak. And we appreciate having you today.
No problem.
To speak
Thank
to
you
our...
for inviting me. I really appreciate it. And again, special thanks to TDSB, you, Aruj, and your entire team for making this happen. I think it's very meaningful and valuable, and I'm sure the families will appreciate it. So thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Hi, are you guys done?
Yes, we are done.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry, you're done?
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Okay, you're free to go then. If everything is good,